Have you ever wondered what color your heart carries on the days you want to give up on English? Maybe it turns a little gray, a little blurry, like when you listen but nothing lands, when you speak but the words feel heavy, when reading feels like running through wet sand. This video is my true story in Denmark, where loneliness had colors, fear had shapes, and English became the brush that repainted my life. If you're tired, stay with me. Weight of quiet English version. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a silent Danish square, where even the sound of your own footsteps feels like a reminder that you are completely alone. That was the feeling I carried during my first months here. And silence so thick you could almost hear your own fears clicking inside your chest. You'd think silence helps your mind focus, but the truth is your brain hates extreme quiet. It starts magnifying your insecurities, amplifying your weaknesses, and whispering in your ear, "Just give up. You're tired." In Denmark, peace sometimes becomes a giant mirror that magnifies your loneliness. When your English isn't strong yet, everything you hear sounds like smudged colors. The cashier's quick sentences, a coworker's casual question, the laughter of a group outside a cafe. You catch a few words, lose a few more, and your brain, proud and stubborn, starts throwing a tantrum. Psychologists call this cognitive overload. When your mind has to process sound, meaning, speed, and emotion all at once. And the result? You feel slow behind, like you're watching everyone else board a train that you keep missing. I still remember an autumn afternoon so gray it felt like someone had turned down the brightness of the entire city. I was sitting at a small train station near Aarhus, listening to each train announcement, without understanding a single sentence. Not one. My heart felt like it changed color into something cold, muted, like seawater just before it rains. And I thought, maybe I'm not built for this. Maybe I'm not good enough. But strangely, that loneliness forced me to really listen. When no one talks to you, you start hearing the sound of bike tires rolling over cobblestones, the soft roundness of the Danish R, the patient rhythm hidden inside the language, so different from the sharp, quick American English I grew up studying. And I realized, silence wasn't the enemy. It was a test, a quiet exam life gives you to see if you'll face yourself when there's no noise left to hide behind. There's a fascinating scientific fact. When you feel lonely, your brain increases activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region that processes physical pain. In other words, loneliness literally hurts. Not metaphorically. The same way a scraped knee hurts. And learning English inside that loneliness makes every tiny mistake feel like a cut. But that also proves something important. You still care, you still hope, you still want to belong. Basically, your heart isn't giving up, it's just changing color. And it's waiting for you to take the next step. Her blue morning English version. Imagine waking up on a morning where the light outside your window looks blue. Not the nice kind of blue like a summer sky, but a cold blue, a gray blue, the kind of blue that pulls your mood down without asking for permission. That was exactly my morning in Denmark when I almost gave up on English. Your brain hates mornings like that. It loves familiarity. It loves the feeling of, I know what I'm doing. And learning English is basically like trying to assemble a puzzle in the dark. That morning I sat in my tiny rented room holding a basic English dialogue. Just 6 lines. A 7-year-old could say it. But me, a grown adult living in Europe, I read it like I was decoding ancient symbols. I stumbled over every sentence. The audio sounded as fast as Danish bicycles going downhill. And when I tried speaking, it felt like someone squeezed my vocal cords. And you know the funniest part? When you feel stupid, you immediately believe you're the only one struggling. But that's one of psychology's greatest scams. Researchers call it the spotlight effect. You think your mistakes are massive, glowing under a stage light, while in reality no one cares. But your brain loves exaggeration. It convinces you that everyone hears your mispronunciation, everyone is judging you, everyone is better than you. And that's when your heart turns blue, the color of, I'm not good enough. I remember my hands shaking slightly as I pressed replay. It felt like preparing to jump into cold winter water. You know it's necessary, but your body refuses to cooperate. I almost stood up. I almost quit. I almost walked out to buy a coffee, anything to escape. But right as my hand touched the door handle, I heard two Danes talking in the hallway. Not English. Not the language I was struggling with. But that exact moment made me realize something important. They also had to learn English once. No one is born speaking English fluently. No one. Even many Danes still make mistakes, still hesitate, still use simple words. And I laughed just a little when I realized I'd been torturing myself with an impossible standard. And my brain whispered, how on earth do you expect perfection on day 40 when they took 14 years to feel confident? Science says this. If you listen to the same voice for just 2 to 3 minutes, your brain's resistance drops by 15 to 20%. Meaning, if you survive the first 3 minutes, you win. And that blue morning I stayed for 3 more minutes. Just 3. Basically. Sometimes your heart isn't sad. It's just impatient. A red memory in Odense English version. Some days your heart changes color not because it's sad, but because something hits you too hard. For me, that happened in Odense, a small city, the hometown of Hans Christian Andersen, where even the fairy tales seem to be written in red. The red of embarrassment, the red of shame, the red of moments that make you want to sprint out the nearest exit. But also the red of turning points. Picture this. You're standing in a small pastry shop, trying to order a simple cinnamon roll. Easy. Too easy. You practice the sentence all night. But when it's finally your turn, your brain suddenly shuts down. Not slows down, shuts off completely like a laptop dropping to 0% battery. You open your mouth and instead of saying 1 cinnamon roll please, you say, 1 cinema roll please? I heard myself and genuinely wanted to disappear. The cashier looked at me, tilting her head like she was observing a newly discovered species. After 2 seconds, which felt like 3 entire lifetimes, she laughed. Not mockingly, just surprised. But to your brain, that laugh might as well be a fire alarm. This is humiliating. Run. Psychologists call this the social threat response. When you mess up in front of someone, your brain activates the same survival system used when early humans feared being kicked out of their tribe. That's why your face turns red, your heart races, your hands get sweaty. Your body thinks you're in mortal danger, all because of a pastry. And in that moment, I thought I might actually cry from embarrassment. But then something unexpected happened. The cashier switched to a slow, soft voice, speaking in English so simple a child could understand. Do you mean a cinnamon roll? It happens. Don't worry. Just 1 sentence. But it felt like someone switched my heart from pain red to sunrise red. Warm red. Human red. The color of, wow, maybe I'm not as hopeless as I think. Then the person behind me said, "It happened to me too when I moved here. A Dane. Born here. Once made mistakes too." And just like that, the entire self-doubt palace my brain had built collapsed. Beautifully. I stood there, hands still shaking, but realizing for the first time a truth every English learner forgets. You're not alone. And you're definitely not the only one who says things wrong. Science adds something interesting. When you go through an embarrassing moment and survive, meaning no one attacks you, no one rejects you, no one truly mocks you, your brain creates a corrective experience. A gentle rewiring. A message that says, "See? That wasn't as dangerous as you thought." And that day in Odense, I got my corrective experience. A memory painted bright red. A beautiful stumble. A quiet truth. Mistakes don't kill you, they teach you. Basically, embarrassment is just red, and it always fades. Gray days of learning. There were days when everything felt gray, like someone had drained the colors from the world, leaving only fog, stone, and the dull hum of your own doubts. Those were my gray days in Denmark, when learning English felt less like a journey and more like slogging through mud. Every word I mispronounced, every sentence I misunderstood, every hesitation in speaking, it all accumulated like wet stones in my backpack. You carry them around, and eventually even standing feels heavy. Imagine sitting in a classroom or a cafe, headphones in, trying to follow a podcast at a slow pace. The host speaks clearly, but somehow the words still leap past you like fish in a stream. You rewind, listen again, try to mimic, but your mouth refuses the sounds, your tongue tangles, your brain craves simplicity and rebels. And there you are thinking, why can't I just be like everyone else? The comparison trap is real, and it's lethal. Your mind tells you that others are fast, smooth, natural, while you are clumsy, slow, awkward. Neuroscience even explains this. Your brain's mirror neuron system fires when observing others, so your mind literally compares your imperfect actions with their perfect ones, magnifying frustration. I remember one gray afternoon walking along the canal in Copenhagen. The water was dull, the sky was dull, even my thoughts were dull. I had just finished a listening exercise that should have been simple, but I could barely summarize a single sentence. I felt like the language itself was mocking me, turning every sound into a reminder of my failure. And that's when the doubt crept in. Maybe I'm not meant to do this. Maybe English isn't for me. But here's a tiny twist that changed everything. Instead of running, I sat on a bench and observed the people around me. Tourists mispronouncing street names, locals hesitating while ordering coffee, kids learning new words at school. And I realized something: everyone struggles at some point. My failures weren't unique, they were universal. Every error is a signal that your brain is stretching, building new pathways, learning to map sound to meaning. Cognitive psychology calls this desirable difficulty. The process feels hard, uncomfortable, sometimes even discouraging, but it actually strengthens learning. So I started small. 10 minutes of listening each morning, repeating one phrase aloud, just one. No pressure, just presence. And slowly the gray began to lift, not because the sky changed, but because my heart remembered. Persistence beats perfection. Every small step forward is a brushstroke, adding color back into your learning canvas. On gray days, your heart doesn't fail. You just need to acknowledge its fatigue, offer patience, and keep moving. Even when progress seems invisible, it's quietly happening in the background, rewiring your brain, shaping your confidence, and preparing you for brighter mornings. Basically, gray days are not walls. They are the soil from which your growth sprouts. A yellow breakthrough. 450 to 550 words. After weeks of gray, dull mornings and frustrating afternoons, something unexpected happened, like sunlight piercing through a foggy Danish sky. That day my heart shifted to yellow, a bright, warm, almost electric color of hope and clarity. It wasn't dramatic, not like a sudden epiphany from a motivational quote. It was small, subtle, and completely real. I understood a sentence in English the first time I heard it without pausing, without rewinding. Just understood that it happened during a slow-paced podcast I had been listening to daily. Usually I replayed each line 3 or 4 times, mentally screaming at my own tongue for fumbling the words. But that morning something clicked. My brain didn't just hear the words. It connected them to meaning instantly. I laughed out loud in my tiny Copenhagen apartment, feeling a surge of pride I hadn't felt in weeks. That tiny moment of comprehension, the aha moment, was like a spark turning the lights back on inside my head. Psychologists explain these moments as fluency bursts. When your brain finally integrates new language patterns, it temporarily processes them with far less effort. That's why understanding suddenly feels effortless, like catching sunlight in your hands. And the best part? Your confidence grows exponentially after one fluency burst, even if it's small. You start noticing that you can understand, you can speak, and the mistakes don't matter as much anymore. I took advantage of that yellow morning. I spoke aloud, repeating sentences, adding new words, testing my memory. Each repetition felt smoother, easier. I even recorded myself reading a short story, then played it back. I sounded human. Not perfect, but human. That's when I realized, yellow isn't just comprehension. Yellow is courage, curiosity, and the permission to experiment without fear. Here's a simple action you can take if you're stuck in your gray days. Pick one sentence, one phrase, or one paragraph that you barely understand, and focus on it for 10 minutes. Read it, listen to it, speak it. Your brain will reward this small, concentrated effort with a yellow breakthrough. And trust me, that single color shift can change your whole perspective for the day. That morning I walked along the cobblestone streets of Copenhagen, listening to ambient sounds, repeating phrases softly to myself, and noticing how the world seemed warmer, more alive. The cafe owners, the cyclists, even the seagulls sounded less intimidating and more like companions on my learning journey. My heart wasn't anxious anymore. It was awake, energized, and ready to keep moving. Basically, breakthroughs aren't always flashy. They're quiet yellow sparks that light the path forward. One small moment of understanding can restore faith, ignite motivation, and remind you why you started. Green steps forward. After that yellow breakthrough, I realized that progress in learning English wasn't about huge leaps. It was about small, consistent steps. That's when my heart shifted to green. The color of growth, patience, and steady forward motion. Each day, I committed to simple actions that seemed almost trivial but, over time, created momentum I never imagined. For example, I began recording myself reading short passages aloud. Just 5 minutes each morning. At first, my pronunciation was clumsy, my rhythm awkward, my intonation robotic. But I kept going. Neuroscience shows that repeated, deliberate practice strengthens neural connections. Your brain literally rewires itself to process and produce the language more smoothly. Each small recording was a tiny green shoot sprouting in the garden of my learning. I also made a habit of listening actively to ordinary sounds around me. Conversations in cafes, announcements at train stations, even the clatter of dishes in a restaurant. At first, I understood almost nothing, but I repeated the process daily. Gradually, my comprehension improved, not magically, but predictably scientifically. My brain began to anticipate sounds, fill gaps, and make connections faster. It was growth in action. Walking through Nyhavn, I practiced speaking to myself aloud, describing the boats, the colors of the buildings, even narrating the way the water reflected sunlight. People glanced at me, sometimes smiling, sometimes curious, and I didn't care. Every sentence I spoke strengthened confidence. Every repetition reinforced memory. Every tiny success painted my heart a brighter shade of green. Psychologists call this the self-efficacy effect. Small accomplishments build belief in your ability to continue. I also began tracking my tiny wins. Something as simple as understanding a phrase on the first listen or successfully ordering food without hesitation. Seeing progress, even minuscule, creates dopamine surges in the brain, giving you natural motivation to continue. The more green shoots I noticed, the more committed I became to nurturing them. And the beauty of these green steps was that they weren't glamorous. No flashy apps, no motivational posters, no dramatic transformations overnight. Just consistent, deliberate, mindful practice. Every day a little listening, a little speaking, a little reading, a little patience. And slowly my heart, my confidence, and my skill grew together. Basically, learning English isn't a sprint. It's a series of green steps forward. Tiny actions repeated daily create lasting change. The more you commit to small, deliberate practice, the brighter your heart becomes, and the clearer your path ahead. The color we choose. After weeks of gray frustration, yellow breakthroughs, and green steps forward, I realized that the colors of my heart weren't dictated by circumstances. They were choices. Every morning I could wake up and let doubt paint everything gray. Or I could take small steps and allow curiosity, courage, and persistence to color my day. The lesson was simple but profound. You choose the emotional palette for your learning journey. In Denmark, I noticed that even native speakers struggled with communication in different contexts. People mispronounced words, forgot phrases, hesitated, or stumbled over grammar. And yet they continued. They chose patience over perfection, resilience over fear. Observing them reminded me that language isn't a test. It's a tool for connection. And the colors of your heart reflect how you approach it. Frustration creates gray, embarrassment creates red, curiosity creates yellow, and deliberate growth creates green. I started applying this consciously. Each time I felt my heart sinking into gray or red, I paused and asked myself, which color do I want to paint this moment? Then I took one small action. Repeating a phrase aloud, listening attentively to a podcast, or writing a short diary entry in English. These weren't grand gestures, but they reminded me that I was in control, and control is empowering. Psychologists call this cognitive reappraisal. The ability to reinterpret a situation to change its emotional impact. Instead of thinking, I can't do this, I learned to think, this is difficult, but I am learning. Each mistake is data, not defeat. That small mental shift altered the color of my heart every single time. Suddenly, gray mornings became manageable, and red embarrassment became a lesson in humility. One afternoon, I was speaking to a local Danish friend, struggling to convey a complex idea. My tongue twisted, my grammar failed, and yet I laughed and kept going. The conversation didn't end in perfection. It ended in connection. That's when it hit me. Language isn't about flawless execution. It's about human expression and the courage to keep coloring your heart despite mistakes. The takeaway is simple. The colors of our hearts reflect the mental and emotional choices we make. You can let frustration dominate, or you can nurture curiosity and persistence. You can stay trapped in gray, or you can step into yellow and green. Every choice matters. Every small action you take is like picking a brushstroke in the painting of your language journey. Basically, the color of your heart today is in your hands. And once you realize that, learning English becomes less about speed or perfection, and more about growth, resilience, and joy. Her heart today. Now, after months of ups and downs, breakthroughs and stumbles, I often pause and ask myself, what color is my heart today? Some mornings it leans gray, weighed down by tiredness and doubt. Other days it bursts yellow with clarity, curiosity, and small victories. And then there are green days full of steady growth and quiet confidence. The truth is, the color changes constantly, just like your language journey. Unpredictable, alive, and deeply personal. I think back to my first weeks in Denmark, feeling lost and isolated, my heart heavy with blue loneliness. I remember the red embarrassment ordering a cinnamon roll in Odense, and the gray frustration listening to a podcast I couldn't follow. And I remember the tiny yellow breakthroughs, the green steps that slowly rebuilt my confidence. All of these moments were necessary. Without the blues, reds, and grays, the yellows and greens wouldn't shine as brightly. Here's the lesson I want to share. Your heart isn't static, and neither is your ability to learn. Language learning mirrors life. It's messy, imperfect, emotional, and ultimately rewarding. Each color reflects a lesson, a feeling, or a choice. And the most important choice is to keep going despite mistakes, fear, and self-doubt. Science even backs this up. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, works best under challenge and persistence. Every mistake strengthens connections, every repetition improves fluency, and every small success reinforces your belief in yourself. The heart and the mind are working together, even when it doesn't feel like it. Your colors aren't failures, they are signals of progress, evidence that you are alive, engaged, and learning. So today, wherever your heart falls on the spectrum, gray, blue, red, yellow, green, acknowledge it. Accept it. And then take one small action. Repeat a phrase, listen attentively, speak aloud, or simply reflect on your progress. Those tiny steps, repeated daily, paint your heart in brighter, more vibrant colors, gradually turning challenges into triumphs. Walking through the streets of Copenhagen now, listening, speaking, noticing, and practicing, I feel a sense of peace. My heart may still shift colors, but I know that each hue is part of the journey. The blue moments teach empathy, the red moments teach humility, the gray teaches patience, the yellow teaches joy, and the green teaches growth. Together, they form a rich palette for learning and living. Basically, the color of your heart today matters, but it doesn't define your future. Keep listening, keep speaking, keep learning. Every small step adds color to your journey. Every mistake is a brushstroke, and every breakthrough is a sunrise. you.